Elliot, this is an annual event for us to sit down and like all things Inovus. It's been a hell of a year for you.
It certainly has. I can't believe it's been a year since we were sat outside in the sun on the West Coast. But great to be back here in Houston, and another great agenda at STTS. So yeah, good to be sitting with you, and happy to share a few things.
Yeah, I am excited to bring the audience up to all things Inovus that's been going on, and the build, and the new location, or the new locations,
Yep.
Right? We got to cover the shed, so share with the audience where we are and what we've accomplished.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So I think the way to describe it is at Inovus, we've gone slow to go fast, right? We've taken a slightly contrarian route to building a medtech business in terms of how we funded it, how we've raised capital, I think our approach to building our teams. And ultimately that's boiled down to, in the last 6 months, we've gone from what we lovingly describe as our shed in the corner in St Helens, which is a great town where we've built a business in the UK, to 3 locations globally. So it's been a bit of a whirlwind. We started out with opening our US headquarters down in Tampa, in Florida. I've got a bit of a draw to Florida, as we know from many of the times we sat down together. But that's a great hub for us. Logistically, it's really, really useful. The time difference into the UK, where a lot of our global manufacturing is, which we'll touch on in a moment. And the reason for that hub and putting that in is this partnership that we've managed to pull together between AAGL, so the Gynecology Society for Minimally Invasive Surgery, and Hologic. So I could touch on that if that's okay, because it's really exciting for us as a business. So this all comes down to one of the things we've been speaking about today at STTS, which is, what is our approach to training surgeons, and how should we be thinking about that for the future? And one of those approaches for us is, we need to get to a point where we have a standardized, equitable platform for training surgeons, whether or not they're in Arkansas or New York or San Francisco. And that's just for the US, right? So we were able to pull together these stakeholders, AAGL, Hologic, and what that's meant is our platform, so our laparoscopic platform, LapAR, our hysteroscopy platform, HystAR, powered by our digital surgery platform, Totum, is now becoming the standardized platform for training OBGYNs across the USA. We've got a long way to go. We're in the middle of a 300-site implementation across the US. That leads back to our team in Tampa. We put them in to run that, and they're doing an amazing job of it. And while we've been doing that, just to add to the workload, we decided we think we need a new global headquarters. And we've been building our business for 12 years in this amazing town called St Helens in the northwest of England, where there's some amazing talent. And timing is everything. We've been there for 12 years, and we're now finding that we've positioned ourselves in a town that is focused on building a medtech campus and doubling down on healthcare and life sciences across the region. So we've committed to St Helens with our new global space. It's housing our R&D, it's housing all our commercial function. And it's a beautiful building. I'd love to get you out there at some point in time and show you around. It's got a training center there. It's got some incredible innovation space for driving the technology that we're building. So yeah, busy 6 months all round, but very exciting.
We still have the shed though.
Thanks for reminding me. The shed.
Tell our audience who haven't been following you literally what the shed was.
Yeah, so to get to the shed, there was a bit of a journey. So Jordan, who's my co-founder, and I, we started the business in a bedroom with a heat gun and a sheet of plastic and a drill, making plastic laparoscopic box trainers.
So you were a competition with Billy Cohen's chat last night.
I was sat there resonating with Billy. I took a photo of Billy's slide that said the Home Depot is the MedTech Innovators HQ, and I sent it to Jordan and said, look at this slide. This is so on point for us. So we started in the bedroom, then we went to a garage. When we ran out of space there, we needed to sort of up our game as a business, and we were looking at, well, if we go and lease a factory, a space to build our technology, it's going to cost us X. We worked out we could actually buy a unit. This is back in 2017 for less than the cost of a lease. And so these 2 young lads who sort of graduated out of the basement unit that they were in, about 1,000 square foot, were going, right, we need sort of 5,000-6,000 square foot unit here. Let's go ahead and buy it. And we somehow convinced the bank to lend us the money. We bought this shed, and we moved in with 2 blokes and a dog and a laser cutter And that was what we had, building all our technology at the time. It's now full of production level 3D printing technology. There's all sorts of injection molding technology in there. And with that, relatively speaking, small square footage, we've got a pathway to over $100 million in revenue coming out of that building. So yes, we've moved into some swanky new offices for the development, a bit more in keeping with the sort of digital first business we are now, some swanky new headquarters in Tampa. But ultimately, the shed is the foundation to our business, which is the technology we sell, which is some great hardware that has intrinsic value to the users.
You promised me Inovus, as it continues to have this meteoric rise, will never get too bougie.
Exactly, and so when we hired our team in Tampa, they're our implementation team. They're entirely focused on supporting AAGL, Hologic, and importantly, the 300 residency programs, or just under 300 residency programs across America. And I'd spent some time training them and onboarding them, and one of these implementation specialists turned around and said, Elliot, the best way we've got to describe you, and really the whole business, is bougie but low maintenance. And so I think that hits the nail on the head. For us, it's all about building a fundamental business on good fundamentals, i.e., are there good margins? Is it profitable? And what we're building, does it have intrinsic value to the end users? And ultimately, that intrinsic value comes from the pricing structure, right? So I've mentioned this many times when we've sat down. Our core values are to build technology that's more affordable, more accessible, and more functional. So better and cheaper than the competition. How do you do that? You don't become too bougie and think, I have to be in a glass building for all my manufacturing. You put it somewhere where your manufacturing is as low cost as possible. It benefits from geographical arbitrage. And then that means that instead of saying, okay, I can just have even bigger margins and make even more money, you pass that cost saving on to the end user. And that's been a really, I think, one of the most powerful parts of our growth, because we live that, we breathe that. We're not shy to hide that we've got the shed in St Helens, and we say, guys, we could go and put our headquarters in Boston, or we could put it in the Bay Area and put our manufacturing there, but our prices will go up, and it's not going to change the quality of the product and the service that you get. So I think we've had some great buy-in from our supporters and our...
Yeah, and also there's a certain grit that comes with that and never gets lost.
Yes,
right?
And we look for that when we're hiring. I mean, I think you know this, and Ryan on your team who we work with knows this, which is ultimately almost our entire hiring process is focused around, can we find people with that grit? Yeah. Because we've also built the business in a very intentional but with patient urgency way. So we haven't raised bucket loads of capital. And so when we bring people into the business, and especially now we have to manage this narrative, which is when they used to come into the business, they'd come into the shed. The hiring will be done in the shed, the training's done in the shed, they're operating out of the shed. Now they come into a really beautiful building. And it's our job as the leadership, myself, Jordan, and the rest of the team that have been with us for 5, 6, 7 years, to instill that grittiness in them and say, you've got a great environment, but the things that we've been doing that have led to our success, we have to double down on those now. I think I was sharing this with you the other night. We were worried about that when we moved the development teams and the commercial teams into this new space. And in our classic Inovus way, we didn't sort of sit there and shout at them and say, don't let yourselves down and stop working. We sat down, we went through it with them and said, this is what we are worried about as a leadership team. Mm-hmm. It's really important to us that we make sure we keep doing those things. And I think that productivity it's like 4x since
Wow.
we've gone in there, which was a really nice thing to see. So all respect goes to the team for doing that and sticking to the core values.
The training simulation business, and I don't know if I've just started to pay more attention to it over the last couple of years, and therefore it seems that it's grown, or has it found its place because of certain other activities, influences in the industry?
So it's certainly growing. And I think the exciting thing is, the way I'd actually describe it is, if you think about the Bitcoin curve, where I'd actually describe surgical training technologies and surgical simulation, surgical training is encumbered by that, is we're at like where Bitcoin was when it was 150. Like, we've got to get to the 60,000 still, which is really exciting. And so what do I mean by that? I think traditionally this was a an industry where people would make a technology very siloed, very focused on one particular need that needed solving. What we've tried to do, and it's really nice to see some of the other players in the market doing this, is they've said, okay, let's take a step back. Let's look at the training pathway, and let's understand what parts of the pathway we need to develop technology for. And then it's a problem-first approach with the technology. And I think we've been very intentional about that. It's nice to see other industry players doing that. And what that's now allowed us to do is bring all of the stakeholders together. So again, going back to this example of this amazing partnership we've done with Hologic, they were very forward-thinking on this. But we went to them and a number of other strategics and said, guys, there's a major problem that we do have here. We don't actually have enough fully trained surgeons. The way we're going to fully train those surgeons is improving access to good quality technology. And then the other issue is who's going to fund that and support that. And the fact that we'd articulated, here is the problem, here is the pathway, and this is where the technology fits. And by the way, this is how the societies and the clinicians feel about that. Go and speak to them. That allowed some of those partners to look at that and come in and say, yeah, we can help fund that. So I think that's been a major part of the growth, not just strategics, but the hospital systems, the societies, anyone else that's involved in paying for this technology. The fact that we've really articulated, here's the problem, this is how we solve it in this part of the pathway. That's starting to see that growth, but there's a long way to go, right? Just very quickly, we're just in the verticals of laparoscopic and hysteroscopy, so we play across general surgery and gynecology. There are so many parts of the horizontal that need that approach where it's either not being done or it's being done by one or two small players. So I think we're going to see a lot of capital flow into this part of the industry over the next sort of 5 or 6 years, and you're starting to see some of those capital allocators look at it and build hypotheses and go, okay, we understand this now. It's not VR simulation. Right. It's surgical training technologies. Where in the pathway does this sit? How are we going to find the right platform to fund? And does that see some roll-ups starting to happen? And I think that's a little bit further downstream. I think in the first instance, we're going to see a lot more capital come in to raise up some of those businesses that solve it.
I would tend to agree with you. I've been scratching my head for a couple of years now, wondering who's going to be the first that's going to do a roll-up. Because when you think about the declining number of surgeons, the number of surgeons that are thinking about leaving the industry, you're starting to look at more expensive platforms come into play, and there's no way you can have a $500,000 or $1 million platform to train on, let alone give up surgery time on. Mm-hmm. And when you start to triage the training sort of curriculum, basic fundamentals, right? If you're going to play a sport, you were a very high-end tennis players, right? There's some movements that you do time and time again, increasing efficiency, competencies, right? And then as you get to more refined skills, then you can start to have that continuum of training, mm-hmm. whether it's a pure analog play or it ends up bleeding into a virtual environment, right? And then you've got your teams you train, you've got your surgeons you train, you've got your assists you train. So I think that this is really setting up ideally for a good time right now. And you don't have FDA oversight really at this point in time.
No, exactly. And that's going to be an interesting journey, I think, for industry to go on. And I think at some point in time, it's going to be beholden on us to almost push for that, right? Because I think that's really important. As a clinician, my core is telling me we should be thinking about that as an industry. And we and I know some of the other leading players are thinking like this, which is great, which is we're almost holding ourselves to that standard. But at the moment, without that oversight, it is allowing us to move quickly, which again is attracting that investment in. But I just want to touch on this, right, which is the importance of actually the growth in surgical training technologies and the problem it's solving. So we started the business 12 years ago. The aim to start the business was to allow surgeons to train a little bit more like elite athletes. So give them a platform that they can access where they can break the skill set down, part proxies, part procedures, full procedures. Fast forward 12 years, we're now 143 million surgical procedures short per year globally. That is because we don't have enough fully trained surgeons. You've already mentioned one of them. Some of them are leaving, but effectively the traditional ways of training surgeons is now not keeping up with the modern day demands. More starkly, that is resulting in over 1.5 million unnecessary deaths per year. Now, that doesn't necessarily sound like a massive number, but when we contextualize that, it's the equivalent number of deaths as all deaths from HIV, multi-drug resistant TB, malaria, and complications of pregnancy combined annually. So this is a major problem for society. And it's very important to say this is not the surgeon's fault and clinician's fault. It's just the happenstance of how things have developed over the last few years. It's now critical that we catch up. And in our opinion, the way we're going to catch that up is through shifting the paradigm such that it's a simulation first-based curriculum where we are rattling through the early learning curve in a simulated environment, getting surgeons to an objective standard and saying, there you go, guys, you're going to be way more efficient now for the rest of the learning curve at the patient bedside. And again, I think from an industry player, that's an exciting opportunity for us to solve, and that's what's going to start attracting a significant quantum of capital into the space.
And it sets up from an economic perspective for private equity play.
Exactly.
It's total private equity play.
Yeah, I agree. And a big part of that is a lot of these platforms need to be a little bit more mature. So you're seeing that there's 3 or 4 players in the market that have either raised a bit of venture capital or a bit more like us. They've built a business where they can sell the product and they can just grow organically.
Venture doesn't know what to do with your model.
It's always been difficult, yeah. But we've sort of now graduated into that sweet spot for that growth stage PE where they're going, hang on, there is a massive upside here. We'll get our 2.5, 3x return, no worries, but the upside is huge. And we've actually got the quantum of dry powder you're going to need because the smaller check size isn't going to move the needle, both from an organic growth perspective and a roll-up or an M&A both perspective as well. You're going to need a decent quantum of capital. And I think those capital allocators with that are looking at it and going, this is a compelling opportunity right now.
I think the horizon's the next 2 or 3 years. I'll be watching it closely, as I know you will. Well, thank you for the Inovus update, my friend.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me the platform to share it with you all. And hopefully this time next year, we'll have some more great updates and looking forward to sharing them.
I look forward to it. And next time you're in Delray, and I do have to get over to Tampa, it's a hop, skip, and a jump for me.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
You got it. I'm Joe Mullings from Houston, SDTS. The next big thing. Be well.